Washington, D.C., the National Institute of Health. Here, in 1990, scientists began the Human Genome Project to identify every gene in the human body and determine what makes up our DNA. This scientific breakthrough may allow us to manipulate human evolution and alter the human race. But is it possible, when we have become masters of human evolution, that we may finally understand the true nature of gray aliens?
When you look at the physiology of what we think the grays are, okay, large head, huge wraparound eyes, spindly body, you have to ask yourself, does this make sense in an evolutionary sense? And the answer is no, but does it make sense if these beings are bioengineered? And the answer to that is yes. That's what the grays really, I think, most realistically are.
I believe that extraterrestrials found on this planet a species that they were able to change the genetic code that would allow them to interact and secure the longevity of their species. We're the product of that. We're the genetic carrier, if you will. One of the reasons why they're still abducting us. That tweaking of the genetic code is still going on. The grays are our space brothers. I don't think they're necessarily evil. We're an ends to a means.
Could extraterrestrials have bred with humans? You sort of need two things to have happened. One is the life form would have had to be carbon-based like us, presumably, because the chemistry has to work. The second thing is you would need basically the same genetic type structure. So you could imagine if there was another planet with fairly similar conditions that gave carbon-based life forms, what would evolve, there is a good likelihood that you would get species like us. And if they were close enough, then of course they could interbreed with humans on Earth.
Why would they be creating a hybrid being? Is there something that's going to happen here on Earth where our genetic makeup maybe won't be able to survive some type of solar activity or something that needs to genetically modify us so that we can still survive? Is it for our own good as humans, or are they doing it for their need as aliens?
If gray aliens interbred with humans, might their biology and appearance be a reflection of their more advanced evolution as a species? And if so, might they provide a hint of what humans may look like in the distant future?
Even though the greys kind of look very different to us, you know, the larger heads, the smaller bodies, the big black eyes, in terms of evolution, you need hands, you need fingers and thumbs, you need eyes, you need ears, you need a mouth, you need to be able to communicate, because you would need that type of form to really advance yourself as a civilization.
When you're a super technologically advanced race, you don't really need big muscles. You don't really need sex organs if you're being genetically engineered, biologically and cybernetically, most likely, to function in the capacity that they do here. A super large head, for example, houses a hell of a large brain, easily their greatest asset. It's a brain that allows them to have a cognitive capacity probably vastly beyond what we're able to have. It's a brain that allows them, most likely, to have telepathic capabilities that are beyond the capability of most humans.
I tend to subscribe to the theory that we are in their image. Sounds like the book of Genesis, doesn't it? But it's very possible that ETs, who look like we do, or should I say we look like they do, came here, did a little manipulation, genetically altered what was here on the planet, created the Adam and Eve, turned it into modern man, and then left for whatever reason.
There is a missing link. The missing link is ET. They've changed our genetic code eons ago, and through a process of evolution, You have the human development to the point where we're going into space. Our evolutionary process is a direct result of genetic manipulation by E.T.
Winchester, England, August 15th, 2002. A crop formation bearing the image of what appears to be a gray alien emerges in a wheat field. At the bottom right corner of the image is a disc-shaped object containing what some believe to be binary code, a computer language consisting of ones and zeros.
There was a crop formation that unmistakably looks like an extraterrestrial, the proverbial gray with the almond eyes and the triangular-shaped head. And there's also at the bottom, there seems to be a computer disk and what looked like binary code. The message allegedly says, "Beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. There is good out there. We oppose deceivers. Conduit closing."
It was warning humanity about the deceivers, about dangers.
Just a year prior, on August 21st, 2001, another formation that contained binary code appeared in a wheat field next to the Chilbolton Radio Observatory. Researchers are convinced that the design was a response to a message that was transmitted into space by astronomers Frank Drake and Carl Sagan in 1974.
In November of 1974, Carl Sagan and Drake at Cornell University sent out from Arecibo, Puerto Rico, a signal of binary code about Earth to whoever in the cosmos would receive our signal.
The original message contained binary encoded information, including the numbers 1 through 10, an image of our DNA strand, the figure of a human, and a graphic of the solar system with the position of Earth highlighted.
It echoed absolutely, line by line by line. But the DNA did not look like double helix. It was very bizarre. And then when you got down, instead of a 6-foot human, it was this thing that was maybe a third the height of the human in Carl Sagan, and it was associated with a strange solar system. It was a very complex, very strange, one-of-a-kind pattern. We'd never seen anything like it before.
In 2004, a mysterious rock was found near the Roswell crash site, bearing the same image as a crop circle that was discovered in Chiselden, England, on August 2nd, 1996.
On the Roswell rock, you have an almost identical symbol in England. To me, it's very fascinating because it essentially shows that they're trying to somehow communicate with us. So the idea is that perhaps some of these crop circles indeed are messages from elsewhere. And elsewhere, in my opinion, means of extraterrestrial origin.
June 2013. In an article for Forbes, graphic artist and researcher Nicolay Lamb illustrates just how the human face might change over the next 100,000 years. With the help of a computational biologist and taking into account future technological, environmental, and genetic influences, he came up with eerie renderings that show an increasingly large cranium with a pronounced forehead, huge eyes, and more pigmented skin tone.
As far as the future, it's always really hard to predict, especially in terms of Homo sapiens sapiens, because we've been so good at modifying our environment through our technology. So if you're trying to think about what we might look like in the future, again, it's a bit hard because we don't exactly know what these environmental pressures may be on us right now.
While Lamb's work was dismissed by some scientists as conjecture, anthropologists have found that humanity has changed greatly over the past 200,000 years. Homo sapiens have developed more delicate skeletons, smaller faces, and more pointed chins. And recent studies have shown the human body is still undergoing significant changes.
So over the last 40 to 50,000 years, tooth sizes have reduced very, very dramatically. And this is largely the product of expansion of both cooking and ultimately the development of pottery. These cultural innovations for changing what we eat and how we eat led to dramatic declines in how large our jaws were and ultimately what our tooth sizes look like. The future direction of human evolution is difficult to chart, but certainly we would think that some continued expansion of brain size may be something that we're going to continue to see as we move forward in human evolution.
In 2012, scientists from the University of Tennessee announced findings that show that human skull size has also increased dramatically just since the late 1800s.
What they found is totally amazing. The average height of the skull increased by an astonishing 8 millimeters, or almost 0.3 inches. The actual increase in brain volume caused by this height change is 200 cubic centimeters, which is the size of a tennis ball. Our jaws are becoming longer and narrower, and the size of the head is becoming bigger. Well, this starts to sound pretty familiar, doesn't it?
Ancient astronaut theorists speculate that extended space travel may also lead us to appear more like the Greys in the distant future.
Some have suggested that the reason why the Greys have these what appear to be atrophied bodies is because that over time their bodies changed. They too at some point had larger muscles, but because they became space travelers, their muscles atrophied.
When you go to space, you don't have that pressure pushing down on you, so those muscles aren't used. And so you lose muscle very rapidly. Also associated with that, your bones begin to atrophy. We're talking about longer and longer missions out into space, going to Mars, going farther. And so astronauts will be subjected to these stresses for a long period of time.
Is it possible that the gray aliens at one time looked more like us when they were planet-bound? And so we're on that same track. And we are becoming more and more like these gray aliens themselves.
Rome, Italy, November 6th, 2014. Vatican officials announce a pastoral emergency due to a rise in occult activity, such as the use of Ouija boards and seances. They caution that the spiritual realm is very real and that these games may have unintended consequences. Similar warnings concerning the danger of trying to summon dark forces can be found throughout history. And in 1918, the infamous occultist Aleister Crowley claimed to be in contact with a dark entity that he was actually able to put a face to.
Aleister Crowley conducted some rituals in which he came into contact with a being called Lamb. He believed this was, as he called it, an interdimensional being, but he never wrote anything about Lamb, which is curious because he wrote a great deal about some of his other rituals. It could be that it frightened him and he didn't want to encourage other people to go down that stage.
What was he looking at?
Where did that creature come from? Who knows? But it doesn't look human. It looks more extraterrestrial.
Lamb looks very much like a gray alien, and in some ways, he looks like one of the Oddness, like Akhenaten, or their children with large extended heads. So you have to ask yourself, is this Lamb actually some gray alien who's appeared to Crowley? And have these gray aliens appeared throughout history?
Is it possible that through his ritual practices, Aleister Crowley made contact with an extraterrestrial entity called Lamb? Some ancient astronaut theorists say yes, and claim further evidence can be found by examining the magical rituals that coincided with the beginning of the age of UFOs. Pasadena, California, 1946. In a mansion on Millionaires Row, rocket scientist and founder of Jet Propulsion Laboratories, Jack Parsons, and Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard dabble in the magical rituals of Aleister Crowley.
Jack Parsons is arguably the most controversial and strange figure in the history of the American space program. He found out about the work of Aleister Crowley and the secret society known as OTO, or Ordo Templi Orientis. And Parsons got very interested in what you could essentially call black magic and Satanism. Then comes along the science fiction writer L. Ron Hubbard. L. Ron Hubbard moved in with Jack Parsons, and together they started to do this elaborate magical ceremony.
Between January and March 1946, Jack Parsons and Ron Hubbard were conducting these rituals. Crowley certainly didn't authorize them to do the rituals. The one thing he did say, he was to advise people not to do his rituals unless they were properly prepared. He was not happy with them doing them.
Some ancient astronaut theorists suggest that by conducting the rituals without understanding the consequences, Hubbard and Parsons inadvertently ushered in the UFO age.
Apparently the same latitude line of Pasadena, California, if you take it all the way around the Earth, you got the Roswell crash, which happens the very next year, 1947, and many other UFO sightings and crashes that took place all over the world. It was as if Parsons and Hubbard were walking alongside a tarp that was hanging down vertically, and they had a box cutter knife and slit holes in the tarp. And these holes become like portals that allow extraterrestrials to get in.
I think that Hubbard and Parsons dabbled in things that they shouldn't have dabbled with. There are a lot of experts out there that think that demonic forces are indeed extraterrestrials. So who knows what the two of them mixed and conjured up, but there was always talk that the two of them were big into UFOs and very strange things like that. And they may have opened up a doorway, a portal, to get all these things through.